Welcome to Bad Bit Games. I'm your host, Joseph. Today, we're going to talk about Sony beginning to publish games for the Nintendo Switch and what this might mean for the industry at large. Now, I was waiting for my car to get done today, and I was flipping through trying to find stories, and this one piqued my interest from GameSpot, that Sony is going to start making games for the PC, the Nintendo Switch, and other consoles. That starting with this game called Tiny Metal, this Advance Wars clone that actually looks pretty awesome. This game's going to be on the PC, but most notably on the Nintendo Switch, this competitor of Sony since Sony started. Remember, Nintendo disrespected Sony when they were trying to make the Nintendo PlayStation, and that's why the PlayStation came to be. It was a stab back at Nintendo going, hey, you don't just disrespect us like that, we're going to start getting into the gaming industry too now. And now, because of that grudge, PlayStation is the #1 brand in video games. So when we saw a few months ago this partnership, it seems, between Nintendo and Microsoft, where they're going to start cross-playing games that were, let's just say, compatible like Minecraft or like Rocket League, you saw Microsoft and Nintendo go, you know what? Let's let our players play with one another. And then we kind of saw Sony go, yeah, we're not going to do that, and walk away, right? It's kind of like they took their ball. They left the game and they took their ball with them, right? It kind of seemed a little greedy from what some gamers thought. And then we saw PlayStation with Andrew House saying, yeah, the Switch, it has their own success. We're more about the living room now. We're all about VR. We're all about the advancement in the living room, not what you can do on the go. Been there, done that. And so what does this mean for the gaming industry at large? Is this Sony turning a new leaf? Well, it's actually not the Sony we think it is. This is a bizarro Sony. This is actually a totally different company making and publishing these games. This is Sony Music Entertainment. This is not Sony Interactive Entertainment, SIE, right? Sony Interactive Entertainment, SIE, they are PlayStation. So from now on, I'll just call them the PlayStation division. They focus on making games and publishing games for the PlayStation brand. The Sony Music Entertainment, well, usually they would just do music stuff, right? Sign artists, make music, make albums, all that jazz. Now it seems they're entering the gaming sphere to find more revenue and to find a market that is, I guess, they think up for the taking, and that is the indie crowd. So this is them trying to make money. These two companies are just that, two different companies. And they're only pretty much associated by name, Sony. Sony is a corporation that owns all these little other companies, and they talk to each other. They sometimes go, hey, PlayStation, we see you making a new box. Could we put Sony Music on there? And then PlayStation going, yeah, sure, let's do something, and partnering up with one another, right? We see that also like with movies or with, TVs or whatever have you. They make deals with each other and partner up because they're using each other's strengths to their advantages. And that's what a corporation does. It's all these little companies, and what they kind of do is sometimes when they're trying to make a big project, they ask dad for the allowance, right? They ask dad for a small loan of $1 million. So they go, hey dad, Sony, could you give me a couple $1 million? We want to make a new console. Here's what it is. And then Sony goes, all right, kid, here you go, and throws them some money to go ahead and do that. So Sony Music Entertainment has nothing to do with our Sony, what we think is Sony, right? When we think of Sony, we're thinking PlayStation, and that's what we need to think of. We're thinking Sony Interactive Entertainment. We're thinking of the PlayStation brand. So their views are still the same. In fact, they have nothing to do with what this music company is doing whatsoever. They have no say. Now, they might be scratching their heads along with ours, but they might understand something we don't. Like how right now, from what I understand, and again, I'm venturing off into somewhere I'm not familiar with. From what I understand, Sony music industry and this Sony movie companies, they're not doing that well at this very moment. Right now, they're trying to find other revenue streams. They're trying to find ways to make money because right now they're not doing so great. So by the Sony Music Entertainment entering into this niche market, maybe if the music industry doesn't pan out the way they see it, then they can go, you know what, we're going to change our name to the Sony Indie Entertainment, and that would be named SIE as well. But whatever, they would work on the name, and they would go, okay, now we're just all about indie games, and that's what we're about. We saw that with Sony Online Entertainment, SOE. They used to make games like Payday. They actually published that. They published H1Z1. They broke off from Sony to make Daybreak games about 2 years ago, back in, I think, January 2016, when I was much younger and more handsome than I am now. That's when they broke off and they created their own company, saying maybe they didn't need Sony, or maybe Sony didn't want their brands to be confused with each other. Nonetheless, Sony, this isn't their first time making games away from the PlayStation brand. So unfortunately, don't expect much out of Sony branching out and doing different things, because this is Bizarro PlayStation. This is a PlayStation that we don't necessarily know. So with that, I want to know what your guys' take on this is. Do you think that this is a right step for Sony Music Entertainment? What do you think PlayStation SIE feels about SME treading on their territory? Do you think they think it's that? Or do you think they're just playing nice with each other? Let me know in the comment section down below. With all that said, with all that out of the way, if you like these smaller news stories, please let me know in the comments. Please like this video if you want me to focus on doing some more smaller stories like this. And it really does help me out, because it gauges where we need to go and take this channel. If I get like 2 likes, then I know not to do smaller stories. I'll just focus on the 10-minute or more stuff. If you want these stories, and hey, please press that like, press that share. I always look at those and determine what I should do next, kind of like what SME is doing. So with that said, and with that all out of the way, if you liked what you saw, please hit like, share, subscribe. Most of all, it helps grow this big, beautiful, dysfunctional family that I call home. And with all that said, with all that out of the way, everybody, keep your wits about you and have a nice